Welcome to this deep dive, designed for you, the learner. You know those moments, right? When you're so focused on one thing, and then later you realize you completely missed something else. Something really obvious.
Oh, absolutely. Happens all the time.
Well, today we're going to unpack why that happens.
Yeah, and it actually tells us a lot about how our minds actively build our reality.
Exactly. We'll be looking at some ideas from Gestalt psychology.
Right, focusing on how attention kind of works like a spotlight.
A spotlight, yeah.
Yeah.
Illuminating some things, leaving others totally in the dark.
Our goal really is to give you a new way to think about your own perception.
And maybe even, get a bit more control over where that spotlight points.
And it's fascinating stuff. And it starts with something quite famous, actually, the invisible gorilla experiment.
Ah, yes. The basketball passes.
Exactly. People are told to count the passes between players in white shirts.
Right. You're concentrating hard on that count.
It's so hard that many people completely fail to notice someone in a full gorilla suit walking right through the middle of the scene, thumping their chest.
It sounds impossible when you describe it, but it happens.
It really does. And the key takeaway is just how selective our perception really is, much more than we tend to believe.
So that spotlight metaphor you mentioned, it really is like that, isn't it? A tight beam.
A very tight beam. It lights up a tiny area, and, well, the rest is just darkness, perceptually speaking.
Which explains that feeling of, how could I possibly miss that?
It does. It's not really a personal failing. It's fundamental to how our minds are wired.
Psychologists call this attentional blindness, right?
That's the term. Our minds are constantly filtering, unconsciously deciding what's relevant based on our current focus or, our expectations.
And blocking out the rest?
Pretty much. You could almost think of the brain as this maybe overzealous editor.
An editor? How so?
Well, it's constantly cutting stuff out, trying to prevent sensory overload. There's just too much information bombarding us all the time.
Okay, that idea of an editor is powerful. It's not just that we can't process everything.
No.
It's that our minds are actively choosing not to, or actively suppressing things.
Precisely. It shifts the whole picture. Attention isn't just a passive receiver.
It's a creative force shaping our experience.
Absolutely. What we focus on becomes our reality in that moment.
Like, different people in the same place can have totally different experiences.
Exactly. Think about it. A musician hears layers in music others miss.
Okay.
An architect instantly sees structural details. A parent in a park can pick out their kid's cry from dozens.
Ah, right. Same park, same sounds, but different attentional spotlights creating different worlds.
And the most amazing part, it's largely unconscious.
Not a deliberate choice to ignore the harmony or the gorilla.
Nope. It's driven by our goals, our expectations, past experiences, even our emotions. Like a very sophisticated autopilot for attention.
Wow. Okay, so that leads to a slightly unsettling thought, doesn't it? If we can miss something as blatant as a gorilla, what else are we missing? All the time.
Opportunities, dangers,
Yeah.
just moments of beauty. It's a profound question. How much of reality just passes us by because our attention isn't pointed that way?
And it's not even a neutral process, is it, this selection?
Not at all. Attention is biased.
How so?
It tends to gravitate towards things that confirm what we already believe,
Confirmation bias, yeah.
or things we desire, or, crucially, things we fear. So it's not just missing things, it's actively selecting based on our inner world.
This feels like a good place to bring in that Gestalt idea, figure ground.
Perfect timing, yes. The principle of figure ground is central here.
Explain that a bit.
At any moment, some elements in our perception stand out. They become the figure, the focus.
Yeah, okay.
Everything else fades into the ground, the background.
Like the main subject in a painting versus the canvas behind it.
Good analogy. And crucially, it's dynamic. What's figure now can become ground later, and vice versa.
Can you give an example right now?
Sure. Right now, you're likely focused on our voices, these ideas. That's the figure.
Right.
But what about, say, the feeling of your feet on the floor? Or the temperature of the air on your skin? Any background sounds?
Yeah, okay. I wasn't noticing them until you said it.
Exactly. They were there, part of the ground.
Yeah.
But directing your attention made them, momentarily, the figure. It shows how fluid that boundary is.
So, wrapping up this first part, attention is this incredibly powerful lens.
It shapes our personal universe.
But it's also limited, very limited, like the gorilla shows.
Yeah.
And it's biased.
In understanding those limits, those biases, is really the first step if we want to maybe possibly see a little more.
Okay, so let's dig deeper into how this structuring happens. The Gestalt principles.
Right. So think of your awareness not just as a blank slate, but as a dynamic field.
A field, like an energy field.
Sort of. An active space where perception takes shape, where sensory input organizes itself. It's not just a passive backdrop.
And this organization isn't random, right? There's a push towards wholeness.
Exactly. That's the principle of pregnance. Our minds have this inherent tendency to seek simplicity, completeness, coherence.
We want things to make sense, to form good shapes.
We do. We don't see a chaos of dots and lines. We instinctively arrange them into meaningful forms.
The classic example is that vase-face illusion, isn't it?
Perfect example. You see either two faces or a vase. Your mind insists on one complete figure or the other.
Figure and ground swapping places.
Precisely. It shows how active our mind is in imposing structure. And it's not just illusions.
How does it apply more broadly?
Well, reading. You don't see individual letters floating around.
No, you see words.
Your mind groups them automatically. The letters become the figure against the ground of the spaces in the page. It's happening constantly.
Okay. What other principles are key?
Closure is a big one. Our ability to fill in the gaps, to see incomplete things as whole.
Like seeing a circle even if a small piece is missing?
Exactly. Your brain completes it. We project expectations onto the world to make sense of it, especially when information is fragmented.
But that filling in sounds like it could lead to mistakes too, like perceptual shortcuts.
It absolutely can.
Yeah.
It's efficient, usually, but it means we make assumptions based on limited data. We try to fit things into boxes.
Stereotyping, maybe? Seeing someone and immediately filling in blanks based on appearance.
That's a potent and often problematic example of closure in action.
Okay, what else?
Then there's proximity. We tend to group things together perceptually just because they're close to each other.
Like stars and constellations. They aren't really together, but they look like it from here.
Exactly. We create connections based on nearness.
Yeah.
And similarly, similarity.
Grouping things that look alike.
Or share features, yeah. Shape, color, texture, even ideas. Similar concepts seem to stick together.
Which also sounds like it could lead to generalizations. One bad experience with someone from a group.
And the principle of similarity might unconsciously bias your perception of others who seem similar.
Yes.
So all these principles operate within, what did you call it, the phenomenological field. Yes, the total context of our experience at any given moment, nothing is perceived in isolation.
Like a knock on the door means something different if you're expecting someone versus home alone late at night.
Exactly. The context, the field, changes the meaning of the figure.
And then there's isomorphism. That sounds complicated.
It's the idea that there's a kind of structural correspondence. The patterns out there in the world are somehow mirrored by the patterns of activity in our brain. Not literally, but the relationships, the structure. Think of it like a map reflecting a territory.
Okay, a map analogy helps. And our attention, as we said, curates this field, chooses the figure.
It does. But again, not randomly. It's guided by needs, psychological patterns.
Like being hungry makes you notice food ads, or being anxious makes you jump at sudden noises.
Precisely. Your inner state primes your attention to select certain figures from the ground.
What about those aha moments, insights? How do they fit in?
Insight. That's often when the mind suddenly reorganizes the field. Maybe you relax your focus, stop forcing it, and then boom, the elements click into a new, meaningful pattern. A solution appears. The figure and ground relationship shifts.
But the modern world, it feels like it works against that kind of insight sometimes.
It definitely presents challenges. Information overload, constant distractions, multitasking.
Yeah, it fragments attention, doesn't it? Makes deep focus harder.
It does. And digital environments are often, let's say, designed to exploit these Gestalt principles.
How so?
Notifications, bright buttons, autoplay videos. They create compelling figures that grab your attention, pulling it away from whatever was the ground. Social media feeds are constant figure ground loops.
So our attention is being constantly hijacked almost.
It can feel that way. But understanding these principles gives us some power back.
How?
By becoming aware of how our perception is being shaped, internally and externally, we can start to be more intentional in relationships and solving problems.
It's about developing attentional flexibility.
That's a great term for it. The ability to consciously shift focus. Zoom in, zoom out, hold the context.
Like training a muscle.
Exactly like training a muscle. You have to practice directing and redirecting it.
Because otherwise we get stuck. stuck in one way of seeing things.
Very easily. We get locked into habitual patterns of attention, missing other possibilities, other perspectives, because they remain stuck in the ground.
Recognizing those patterns is the first step to changing them.
Crucial step. It opens the door to a much richer, more nuanced understanding.
Which brings us to this really interesting paradox, doesn't it?
The paradox being?
That the very mental tools that help us make sense of the world can also trap us, limit what we see.
Shades of Plato's cave. We get used to the shadows and think that's all there is.
Yeah. And you were saying shifting attention isn't just seeing something new, it's like creating a whole different universe of experience.
In a way, yes. Think about looking at a tree. A botanist sees biological processes. A poet sees metaphor. An ecologist sees its role in an ecosystem. An artist sees form and light.
Same tree, completely different realities revealed by the lens of attention.
Exactly. Each perspective is valid but distinct.
And these realities can be layered, like Russian nesting dolls.
That's a good way to put it. Nested gestalts. The leaf is part of the branch part of the tree part of the forest.
And seeing the connections requires shifting focus between those levels.
You need to zoom in and zoom out.
Yeah.
Which really challenges the idea of a single objective reality.
Maybe objectivity is. Well, maybe it's the wrong goal.
Perhaps. Maybe we live in more of a fractal universe. Infinite perspectives coexisting. The physicist's view, the poet's view, the ecologist's view, all engaging with different facets of something.
So the skill isn't finding the one true view, but perceptual agility.
I like that. Perceptual agility. Moving fluidly between levels, holding multiple truths at once, even if they seem contradictory.
But isn't there a sort of downside to that? The more you see, the more you realize you don't see.
Ah, the paradox of awareness.
Yeah.
Yes. You climb the mountain, the view expands, but you also see how many more mountains there are beyond.
It's humbling.
Deeply humbling.
Oh.
But also exhilarating. It pushes us forward.
You mentioned a personal experience at a meditation retreat, watching a stream.
Ah, yes. That was quite something. This simultaneous awareness of the individual drops sparkling, distinct, and the unified flow of the stream as a whole, separation and unity, right there together.
Like figure and ground on a really fundamental level.
It felt like that, like touching just for a moment, that core tension in existence. Wholeness and fragmentation, always playing off each other.
And it makes you think how often we grab onto one side, just the fragments or just a blurry whole, and miss the richness of the interplay.
We cling to single perspectives, dismiss others.
Yeah.
We flatten reality.
So the goal isn't necessarily enlightenment in the sense of seeing everything.
Probably not achievable anyway. Maybe the goal is more about embracing the paradox, developing the courage and humility to navigate these infinite dimensions without needing one simple answer.
And you made a really critical point earlier. Attention isn't neutral. It has a moral weight.
I strongly believe it does. What we choose to bring into the figure, collectively and individually, that shapes the world we live in.
Choosing to notice suffering, or ecological damage, or connection.
Those are active choices. They're not just passive observation, they have consequences. Understanding how perception works brings a certain responsibility, doesn't it? We can't plead ignorance quite so easily.
You had this really wild idea. What if the universe itself is like an experiment in perception?
A provocative thought, maybe. But what if each consciousness, each unique configuration of attention is contributing somehow to some vast unfolding understanding?
It reframes our limitations, doesn't it? If I can't see everything.
Yeah, then I need your perspective. And you need others. Our individual blindness necessitates collaboration. It's how we approach a fuller picture.
Which brings us right back to the deep questions. The why.
Why perceive it all? Is it just survival? Or is there some deeper yearning? A cosmic pull towards wholeness, understanding, meaning.
And Gestalt psychology doesn't necessarily give the answers.
No, but its real power is in opening the doors, asking better questions. Every insight reveals more complexity.
So the invitation is to sit with that open-endedness, embrace the paradox.
I think so. To see clearly, only to realize how much more there is to see. And to remember that attention isn't just something we have, it's something we do. It's an active force. We are constantly creating our reality.
The most profound shift isn't just in what we see, but how we see. Finding new ways to organize what we already know and seeing our limits as invitations.
Invitations to keep exploring.
So as you, the learner, go about your day, Maybe just notice. Notice where your spotlight is landing.
Consider the invisible gorillas potentially walking through your own life.
What aspects of reality are currently in the background for you? What patterns are you automatically forming? What figures are emerging?
Remember the Gestalt principles: proximity, similarity, closure. Notice them at work as you make sense of things.
Because this deep dive really shows it, doesn't it? Your experience isn't just received, it's actively created.
Moment by moment.
And the power to shift that focus, to explore different views, to cultivate that perceptual agility, it's within you.
This is really just the start of a huge, fascinating journey.
So the final thought to leave you with: what new figures will you choose to bring into the foreground next?